The purpose of this talk is not to give you a full explanation of PSSA Honours, but to rather give you some tips on how to be successful. If you want to get all the detail, you need to go to the appropriate website and the appropriate documents. So the first question is, why do you want honours? And I think there are a few reasons why you would like to have some honorary titles. And the first thing is that it is a confirmation of ability. In other words, what this means is if you have this type of honours, then people will know more or less what your abilities are. The second thing is that it is a great motivator because you have to work to obtain your honours. So, and there's very little that you can do that will give you more motivation to work than to apply for honours. And it provides you with access to judging and other opportunities. It doesn't mean that if you don't have honours that you won't be asked to judge, but the chances are just a little bit better when you have honours. And the last thing, it is an achievement to be proud of. Everybody who has some honours will tell you that it is not something that you are just being given, you have to earn it. So, am I ready to apply for honours? That's a big question that many people will ask. And the obvious thing is that you must have at least enough images to obtain the minimum number, but that's not the ideal. You must believe that you can be successful at this application, and you must get an honest opinion from somebody who knows about how these things work to know whether you are going to be successful. But you must be prepared to work during the application period. Very few people obtain it in the first round. People will not always tell you how many times it took them to get their honours, but you must be prepared to work for a few months or years to get this. But in the end, you must be really committed to obtain it. If you just say, I'm going to submit this and see what happens, it's not going to work. So the type of honours, and I'm just going through this very quickly, is the L, what we call the L, or the licentiate. You get the A, associate, a fellow, an expert, and a master. Now, you can either apply for a licentiate or an associate at the start, but you need an associate to apply for a fellowship. An expert and a master, those honours are totally different, and I'm not going to deal with them. A big question that people always ask you, must they apply for an LPSSA or an APSSA at the start? And it's a difficult question to answer. For an LPSSA, you actually need 10 images, but if you really have 20 good images that you think are up to standard, you can apply for an LPSSA. But if you want to apply for an APSSA, I believe you should have at least 30 images. But it must be a case of you are long overdue to apply for this. So for most people, I think you should rather start with the LPSSA than try for the APSSA, unless you are very, very confident that you can get your APSSA. Just some general information on honours. For the LPSSA, there's no requirement for you, apart from being a member of this association, to apply. You need 10 images, and you must get at least 3 images to proceed with your application. And you get a credit when more than 8 out of the 12 judges give you an acceptance. For an APSSA, you need to have an LPSSA, or you need to have 3 diamond ratings. 15 images must be submitted, and the minimum is 5. Again, more than 8 judges must accept an image. For an FPSSA, you must have an APSSA, 25 images, more than 8, or you must at least have 8 images to proceed. EPSSA, you need to have a specific number of diamond ratings. For an MPSSA, there are various other reasons why you can apply for that. So what is the standard of these things? And it's very difficult to say what it is, but in LPSSA, we normally say it must be a 3-star in gold. And now that is very difficult, because what will be a gold in one club will not necessarily be a gold in another club, but it's a good idea of what it is about. And for an APSSA, we say in 5-star it must obtain a gold. Again, very difficult to say what it is. And then in an FPSSA, the images should be exceptional, and it should not be that one that you just got a medal for on one salon. It doesn't mean it's exceptional. It must be something that a lot of people have told you that is really, really a very good image. Technically, we are slightly more lenient towards the LPSSA, although I would say slightly. Technically, your images should actually be excellent. And we have no leniency when it comes to the highest grades. But aesthetically, for your higher FPSSA and that, you need more impact and originality than you need for your LPSSA, but it's not that easy to define this. A question that people always ask is, why did I get all these salon acceptances and now when I apply for honours it's not accepted? And there are various reasons why this is the case. In the first instance, in salons you accept 20% of the images irrespective of the standard. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily good, it's just in the top 20% of what was submitted. In honours, there's no minimum acceptance. So if it's not up to standard, we are not going to accept it. And in salons, you compete against a wide range of images, from very poor to excellent. And here you compare yourself with the top images of people, because people will only submit their top images. And the sequence can affect the results in salons, because you have no control over where your image will be placed in a salon. In honours, you decide where you want to put it. So you actually compete against yourself, because if you submit a panel and there are some weaker images, then you're going to compete against yourself. In salons, you have many inexperienced judges, and that's not necessarily a criticism of a salon, but you have to start somewhere. And in honours, everybody is very experienced. And very important, you have 3 judges in a salon, and in honours you have 12. Now, why is this important? For instance, you can have 3 judges who are not very technically minded, and they will not see some technical problems with the photograph, but when there are 12 judges, somebody's going to see it. So you're not going to get away with being lucky that people didn't see something. And then in salons, we're supposed to use calibrated projectors, but I'm not always so sure that it is so well calibrated. At honours, we really make sure that the projector is perfectly calibrated all the time. Now, another question is whether you should apply for a specialized or a general panel. Now, specialized means it's let's say sport or something, and general means it's a mix of images. Now, with specialized panel, the images flow a little bit better, and because they go together. But you should never compromise on quality, because in the end, the images are actually individually judged. So don't put lower standard images in just to have a specialized panel. Always use your best images at all time. Select your best images, and if it's a specialized panel, then that's good. But if you have a mix, then rather go for a general panel. And then very importantly, you get one person to assist you and ask his honest opinion. Don't ask too many people, especially if you want to ask somebody of the panel. You are only allowed to ask one person to assist you. But ask him or her to give you his honest opinion, because it doesn't help if you just want somebody to tell you it's nice. That's not going to get you anywhere. Certain aspects to remember is the panel will be displayed, and you must therefore be proud of the panel. It's not just a case of getting this honours. In the end, it's going to be shown at your club or everywhere else. And if you sit there, you must say, "Man, that's my panel, and I'm really proud of it." And importantly, you must be able to obtain additional images that will fit in. So if you, for instance, submit a PSSA panel of 15, you must accept that some of them will not be accepted, and then you must be able to go back and find others that will fit into your panel. And you must present all the images the same, everyone with frames or without frames, or how you want to do it. And you must retain your standard throughout your panel, because if there are really weaker images, they're not going to make it. And importantly, the images are going to be projected. And it's a very good thing to evaluate your images on a projector before applying, because if you sit by yourself and you look at your computer screen, it might not show the same as it will be shown on a projector. And the images are projected first of all as thumbnails, then we look at the whole panel, and then we judge the individual images. And I'll come back to that procedure again. So why are images not accepted? And there are a number of reasons for this. And the first one that we often would mention is subject matter. Now what this means is it is not a very nice image for a competition photograph. It's, for instance, your grandchild. It's a very nice family photo, but the subject matter is just not interesting enough to make a competition photo. Composition, that's obvious. Unsuccessful technique, and that's normally when we work with something like altered reality, where you applied some other technique and it didn't work. Unnatural processing, especially in nature and sport, that's very important. And then botched manipulation. It's not to say you cannot manipulate. In wildlife and nature, you're obviously not allowed to manipulate, but if you do it terribly, it's not going to work. And then technical problems, and that is the main reason why images are not accepted, is because of the images having some technical problems. So I just want to go quickly to some of the technical problems that we experience. And the first one is exposure. We always think that exposure nowadays is not a problem with all our very advanced cameras, but it is really still a problem. And one problem that we often find is that images are too bright. You sometimes will find too dark images, but people make more mistakes towards the bright side than the dark side. Digital noise, and that's something that many people won't see, but it is there. And if it's there, your image is not going to be successful. Over-sharpening is another big problem. People tend to over-sharp their images, resulting in halos and sharpness problems, so be aware of that. And over-processing, just doing too much. I think people try to do too much to their images, and whereas doing very little will actually enhance the image. So here I have a few panel examples, and I want to show you, give you an idea of what it is. Now, for an LPSSA you need 10 images, and for an APSSA you need 15. And my panels are actually 12. It's just somewhere in between the two. And I'm not saying that what I'm going to show you are examples of the standard. It's more about the flow and what you need to look at than specifically the standard of the images. Now, why is the flow important? It is not scored, and I say not yet scored because I think we need to look at something to give it a kind of a weight, how the panel flows. But it sets the tone and it creates an advantage for you. If you have a very nice flowing panel and I've looked at it, then I'm already a little bit more positive towards you. But you are in a position to show your images at their best, because where you put it in your panel, you can really do something to improve an image, because, for instance, showing a very dark image after a light image will penalize you. Okay, so the first panel that I'm going to show you is a mixed panel. In other words, it's not one genre, it's very different things. And I think what is very important in a mixed panel is to try and have a bit of an even number of genres. So if you want to have, let's say, 3 genres, then have a few of each. And this is an example of a mixed panel with a number of genres that's even. And I start with a macro landscape, another macro landscape, going into the third one, a fourth one, but now I want to go into wildlife. So this is going into wildlife, and you will see what I've done is I've basically worked with the same colors and tone to get to that one. So it's a good way to go over to your wildlife. You go into another one, and another one, and now I want to actually go into sport. So I've gone to the greener one, and I bring in my sport. And I have another sport, and that one. So I basically, with my 12 images, I have 4 of each genres. So it gives you, it shows your versatility, and it shows that you have sufficient number of images in that specific genre. Now, let me just show you what the problem is if you don't do it that way and you have an uneven number of genres. And I start with a bit of a travel photography, and everything is about travel photography, and it flows nicely. It goes on, not badly, not bad. And then here at the end, suddenly now I have a motorbike. Now, how does this fit in? It's still within the rules because it is a mixed panel, but it shows me that I don't have enough of the travel landscapes. Now I have a motorbike, or I have a tabletop. But having one image of something like tabletop, it doesn't show me at all whether you really know anything about tabletop. So try and get at least a few images of the same genre, because it gives the impression that you have insufficient number of images, and probably a lack of effort. You've battled to find a few, and you're just stuck in a few other images there. Good flow. Now, how do you determine the flow of a panel? And there are a few guidelines. You can arrange it according to subject matter, color, dark and light images, and then some people will say landscape and portraits. But I think subject matter and color are the most important. Dark and light you must look out for, but don't arrange them according to them. And I think with a limited number of images, you can't really decide I'm just going to go for landscapes or portraits. If it's your best images, then you just have to use landscape and portrait images. So subject matter and color, I think those are the 2 aspects that you need to use to get a good flow. So I start with landscapes, and as you will see, it's very orangey. I go to another one, orange, and I bring in a bit of green to it. Now I'm going to more towards the green. And this one is green with a bit of orange, but also I brought in some animals. So what will this lead me to? It will lead me to wildlife. So you can see the colors there and the colors there are more or less the same, and it is a nice flow. Still with wildlife, looking at the colors, I'm with wildlife at the colors again. And this is where I end with my wildlife. Now I want to go to altered reality. Now it's very difficult to jump from altered reality, from wildlife to altered reality. But this is the way that I did it. A wildlife image and then an altered reality image. And you will see, although it's totally 2 different types of images, you will see there's still the same kind of feeling between the 2. And then I still have the same colors in my images just to keep it flowing. But I've brought in people now, so I can go to another person. And by bringing in a person, I can go to really a totally different type of image with people. But you have to look at the flow, because it gives you a good impression, and it shows that you actually put a lot of effort into compiling this panel. Now, if I take this exact same panel and I just use the images randomly, just look at what this panel would look like. It does not really flow, and you do not show your images to their best by just randomly putting them in there. So you are really putting yourself in a bad spot there, because it gives a bad impression, and it also shows that you didn't put really much effort into compiling this panel. Specialized panel, and a problem that we often sit with is duplication, and this is an example of a duplication, and I call it a bird in a tree, and here you will see the images. They may be not bad, but you can see they're all taken at the same place and same time. Even though they're not necessarily bad images, they are just too similar. And it doesn't mean that the whole panel is a problem. This one is the whole panel a problem, but you might have 2 or 3 images that are just too similar. So the images are too similar to accept, and you must always be aware of competing with yourself. If you have very similar images, they will never be of the same standard, and you will find that the one image might be a little weaker, and that image will be the one that will not be accepted. So this is just an example of acceptable specialization, which I would say is birds, and you have different birds, not necessarily the same, of the same situation or time. And that shows that you have knowledge of the genre or subject, and you have sufficient number of images. Now, what is wrong with this panel? There's a problem with it, and I call it dewdrops. And if you just look at the panel, you will quickly see the problem is they're not the same size, and you have different borders. And it is really not showing the images to their advantage if you have all these images in different, presented differently. So it affects the flow, and it indicates that you didn't really gave much attention to your compiling your panel. So if I just take the same images and I just have them in the same size, same frame, and I even didn't change the sequence, you will see that it shows a lot better. Now, processing is very important, as I mentioned, the technical problems, and this one I call backlit wildlife. And as I mentioned, we first of all look at the thumbnails. This is not the exact way that we look at it. It's my own presentation of that. But why do we look at the thumbnails? Because you can already see a few things in the thumbnails. It looks very colorful in that, but you can see there are a few images that I'm concerned about. And first of all, some colors are a bit too bright, and you can see some vignetting in the second last image. I'm also able to already see that there are some over-processed and over-sharpened images in this. Now, when we start looking at it, you can see that one in the thumbnails, it didn't look too bad, but it's obviously unsharp. It's definitely not sharp. This one I've blurred the background, and you can really see that. This is over sharpened and really too bright. Yeah, I've done some nice cloning that I can show you a few remnants of, and it's very difficult to clone. You're not allowed to if it's in nature, but it's very difficult to clone without being able to see it. Totally over sharpened, over processed, lots of noise in the background. This one is unnaturally processed. The light is from the back, and from the front there should be more shadow than there is. Just the colors are a bit too much. This is too light and too bright. That one is, it is a bit, it's a bit garish, if I can call it that. This one is one that might make it, but you will always think that it could have been a bit better processed. And that you can see all the noise, and you can also see the vignetting on it, which doesn't work. And this one, the colors are just too much. So the processing must be perfect. And if you wonder about an image, it is probably not up to standard. So if I just use the same panel and I say the processing is okay, you can see what it would look like if it was well processed. No blurring in the background. Well processed. No cloning. Nice backlit images. This I obviously did lighten the animal a little bit, but it's still very natural. Colors are a lot better, also better processed, and this one is better. And here you will see this one. It is definitely better processed. So you didn't process it to your full potential the first time round. Better colors in this one. So processing is extremely important, and you must always try and get your processing so that it is natural. Now we work on the credit system where you get credits for some images, and then afterwards you just have to add to it. And how this basically works is shown in this panel, which I call Istanbul, and I say it's got 7 credits. And if you look at the thumbnails, you will see there are the 12 images, and you will see that this one's got a credit. So we first of all look at your whole panel, including the credits. So here we have a credit. We have a credit. Doesn't matter if it's up to standard. It's just an example. A credit. And then I've added this one. So this will be a new one that we will judge. And I think if you look at it, I think it's okay. It's even better than the previous one. And that is what you try to get when you add new images to your credits, is to get a better image than what you had before. A credit. And even if it's a credit that we think, it is not that great, but if we gave it a credit before, we have to stick with it. This is a credit, and then you have that. And that is a problem. It is just too similar. And then you have one like this, and you think, this is going to maybe be a problem, but we're still going to judge it. A credit, and that is very different from the other one. So it will be acceptable, whereas the others are too similar. And then you get that one. Now, a problem with this one is that the other ones are all outside, and this is an interior. And we will start thinking, why did you enter this? But it's still Istanbul, so you cannot disqualify it. And then when you go to the actual judging, you only look at the images that are actually being judged. And if you look at this one, as I say, I think it's better than the other ones, and I think it will be acceptable. This one will then be a problem because we've seen the other one and it is too similar. So it will not be accepted because it was too similar. This one, let's say we judge it and 8 of the 12 judges accept it and the others not. Then we will discuss it and we will look at the merits of the picture. And the people who like it will say why, and the others will say why not. And in the end, we will rejudge it and give you as fair as possible a chance to get it accepted. This one, as I say, it's different enough so that you can get it accepted. And then because we judge this individually, it's no longer a problem, the fact that it's not fitting in, because at this stage we're not really judging the flow of it. So always remember to put in your best images, irrespective of whether it really flows that well in the system. So just to conclude, it is a challenge, but it is achievable. Thank you.